Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here. And to all of those who called me crazy over the last 19 years when I said there would be digital IDs mandated, to those who bet against what I have been warning about all that time, well, it's time to pay up. Though you probably will have to speed it up a little bit on that payout because very soon, with my social credit score obviously being quite low, you're going to be unable to do this payment because we have actual mandates now in the West. Something I've been talking about for a very long time, but now we actually have it 100% mandated. As modernity.news says, UK goes Orwellian with mandatory digital ID and biometric tracking. This is happening under the guise of stopping mass migration, which, of course, was manufactured by the same government that's bringing in these digital IDs. This is happening as we, of course, see multiple other countries push this. We have Mexico, we have Vietnam. Vietnam actually just closed 86 million bank accounts over missing biometric information. I mean, talk about Orwellian. And we're supposed to believe that this is all going to be used virtuously when the UK is simultaneously arresting people, detaining people for different viewpoints, for making jokes about trans people online. Of course, one person recently got arrested because he said that skeletons of women and men are different. I mean, we're going to believe that there's going to be any virtue in the use of these biometric mandatory digital IDs. You have another thing coming, my friends. Swiss voters narrowly approve digital ID. Critics say it opens door to total surveillance. Remember, this is at the same time as the European Union is pushing forward their digital euro, their CBDC, which comes out within the next month, most likely somewhere in October. And this is while they're bringing in in the EU, these launches of biometric entry, exit, and exit systems for U.S. travelers, as the U.S. does the same thing with TSA. Again, we are in the midst of it, my friends. We're going to go into what this all means, what is happening in the UK, and how it affects you as we see the major Palantir database roll out under the guise of stopping crises that were created by the same people rolling this out in the first place. But before we get into it, I urge people to do two things here, at least, my friends. And we have a lot of options in the description, but two things at least. I urge people in the face of this so that they don't end up with food rations in the future to go and check out heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started, freeze-dried food, and more. Of course, you could use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get 5% off as well as free shipping on these items. This is such a no-brainer. Get prepared now. This isn't like, oh, we'll wait to see what happens. They are literally rolling out digital IDs and mandating them and closing millions of bank accounts. When will people learn that now is a time to get prepared or else be locked on the inside and be stuck on the inside looking out rather than on the outside looking in? And if you want to help support us, we truly could use it because, again, we are in a world of hurt as far as bankruptcy and more in the face of major attacks by shadow banning by mainstream alternative medias and mainstream medias alike. And you guys are the only thing keeping us up and running. So we have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, Subscribestar, where you can pledge for $4.99 a month or more and get exclusive content. Of course, we have our Bitcoin address, which you can scan on the screen here or check out in the description of the video, which I think will help, especially if you go to the privacy coins, which we have at our Cointree link in the description as well. Hit that like button, share on social media. Make sure to find us and subscribe to us on Rumble and BitChute at World Alternative Media. Let's get into this. So, this has been a long time coming. We've all known it. And those who don't know it probably haven't watched us for the last 13 years and haven't been watching my posts on this going back 19 years. The biometric tracking has endless possibilities for control, they say, as the UK goes Orwellian with mandatory digital ID and biometric tracking. Chinese communist-style digital tracking is coming to the UK with a new right-to-work scheme in the form of a universal ID called the Brit Card. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, facing unprecedented backlash from native-born citizens for his open border policies and two-tier justice system protecting migrants from prosecution, is attempting to exploit public anger to gain support for an Orwellian surveillance rollout. The government says a mandatory ID based on the UK One login system will help to stop illegal immigrants from crossing the channel by denying them access to work. The UK One system was introduced in 2023 and is built on biometric tracking. Similar programs have been attempted for 2 decades in the UK, but they have been consistently thwarted by public pressure. The problem with the immigration claim is that it is a clearly baseless con. Take note that Starmer distinguishes illegal immigrants or illegal migrants as the targets of the ID, but most immigrants coming to the UK are allowed in legally, aided by numerous subsidized programs and asylum policies. Starmer's choice of words is very deliberate and highly disingenuous. Again, this is happening at the exact same moment, my friends, that they are rolling out their EU digital ID, and at the same time as they're rolling out the CBDC central bank digital currency in Europe, the digital euro, at the same time as they're implementing a draft in the UK, at the same time as they are calling for a national emergency, which I've always said it's under the guise of emergencies that they'll come in with these technocratic measures, and at the same time as they're mass censoring people and bringing in insane hate speech laws. This is not a coincidence. And it's at the same time as we're seeing similar things in Canada. We saw hate speech laws brought in this last week in Canada, as well as QR codes to get into different towns in Canada. And we've also seen the climate lockdowns, which were litmus, just like the previous lockdowns of 2020 for this. We see the Genius Act and the Real ID passed in the United States. We see biometrics for TSA, and we see Trump doing exactly what we saw on the left with, Obama and Biden and Clinton and all those people pushing for biometrics, utilizing the excuse of climate change. We see on the right with Trump pushing, of course, this Palantir massive database. We see Stargate. We see him putting billions and billions, $500 billion into AI infrastructure, including replacing jobs with AI, as Elon Musk brags about how we'll see about 42% of jobs taken away from the market in the coming couple of years due to AI. But don't worry, you'll have UBI, Universal Basic Income, which is exactly what the World Economic Forum has been working on for a long time, under the guise of saving jobs, under the guise of stopping mass migration. They will bring in biometrics. I've been saying this for a long time. If you've watched me years ago talking about how they will utilize the Trump pull to bring in biometrics on migrants after they've armed and funded cartels, armed and funded terrorists, caused mass migration, brag about, in Israel's case, sending migrants to the West. And remember that the West propped up this system in the first place, this system of technocracy, which goes back to the 1910s with the Rockefellers and Marxists shaking hands to create a corporate monopoly in favor of the state, but utilizing new technologies to force people into a realm of convenience, because tyranny comes under the guise of convenience. Then in comes, of course, the push for China to be propped up as a super state for technocracy. Kissinger met with Mao Zedong in the early 70s to create an alliance with them to prop them up as a monopoly in favor of trade, while, of course, saving them from a starvation event because, well, they're a communist country. They're propped up. Then in comes Zbigniew Brzezinski and the Rockefellers again to create the Trilateral Commission. That leads to the creation of this massive guinea pig state of technocracy, which we see today, which Klaus Schwab says the role model for the Great Reset is China. And now they are rolling out the rug for this massive shift from the West to the East, all by design. They, just like in militarism, they prop up their own enemies in the first place before knocking them down. In this case, they're propping up their own enemies with technology to later succeed them when their system inevitably fails, because all fiat currencies eventually revert to zero, always have, always will, going back to 1024 AD in China. When the dollar fails, they'll have the new CBDC system, and this will be the so-called solution, quote unquote, which they'll replace the old system with. And it'll be a system of convenience and for national security reasons and for safety reasons and blah, 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 blah. This is the narrative they will push to get everyone on that new digital system. So now we have mandatory digital IDs coming out, just like we saw rolled out in Sierra Leone. It started with, to some degree, with migration, but then ended up with jobs. And you couldn't get a job. You couldn't have a bank account. You couldn't do anything without having a digital ID. And that was Bill Gates that helped roll that out in Sierra Leone. We have Kenya, the Ogiek tribe, being starved out because they have low carbon credit scores. See, they'll do this through different means, whether on the right or the left, they'll utilize excuses, pretexts that they've created in the first place to force you into that system. And now we have to also mention Trump meeting in Saudi Arabia with the Saudi crown princes alongside Larry Ellison and Sam Altman of OpenAI, who his sister reportedly claims that he molested her as a child. So just horrible stuff there. I just want to throw that out there. And then, of course, you have Elon Musk, who is one of the top technocrats in the world, pretending to be virtuous, which he's not. He's rolling out X money. He's rolling out an algorithm based in social credit on X to actually get people's information and then utilize it as a social credit system later on. He openly says he's just finishing the work of his grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, who created the Technate Party for a world government, and wants you to put chips in your brain attached to a Pentagon-funded mesh network. So there's that. And then we have, of course, people like Alex Karp of Palantir. We have Larry Fink from BlackRock, which Trump is trying to utilize to take over the Panama Canal from China, which BlackRock's heavily invested in. Again, it's all one big stage show. And of course, we have the rest of the technocrats, Peter Thiel and the likes. So that was to create an AI governance militarist system, which will be based in Palantir technology and create databases on everyone under the guise of stopping terrorism, while also creating a new way of militarism. So we don't have to send soldiers off to die. We'll just send robots into battle to kill humans. Horrible, horrible stuff. And they're rolling out the digital ID at the same time. Give me a break. We've done a video recently about how over 193 countries worldwide are simultaneously rolling out the central bank digital currency. And as I said at the time, with that, they will roll out digital IDs because it goes hand in hand, because they'll need a digital ID attached to the CBDC to determine, by the way, through social credit scores, who deserves food and who does not. They're utilizing militarism in Israel to actually create a litmus test for this, where in Israel, we see, for example, Palantir technology being used through AI to determine who gets aid and who doesn't, also indiscriminately bombing children with that AI technology. And of course, most recently, we have with the murder of Charlie Kirk, who I knew, they are immediately using that to crack down on free speech in weird ways, where they say they want to create databases of anyone that made fun of his death, which I think is sick to make fun of his death. But I also think that it's sick to utilize a guy who stood for free speech and use his assassination to bring in these kinds of censors, which the ultimate form of censorship will be the censorship of the mind, the censorship of the individual. It just starts with speech. It ends with your free will. So that is what they're really after. They want to censor the basis of humanity out of you. So we have this digital ID rolling out, and obviously it's going to eventually hit the average person in the UK, as they already have these digital IDs built into store systems, from Amazon to the markets in the UK, Sainsbury, all those kinds of places. The growing protests in Britain complain about illegal and legal migration. As I always said, they'll come in under the guise of emergency. The government has simply made most migrants legal with limited vetting. At no point has Starmer said he will end asylum policies or take real precautions to stop physical entry. In other words, the flow of migrants will continue, and a digital ID would do nothing to stop the majority of them. The ID also would not solve the problem of the millions of third world migrants already allowed into the country. To put this in perspective, nearly 1 million migrants entered the UK in 2024 alone. Net migration is around 500,000 per year on average. Only 40,000 of those migrants came by boat or were designated as illegal. The Brit card is a fake out, a lie to placate the nationalist movement in the UK while simultaneously introducing more government power. But of course, Starmer will act all virtuous. UK government makes digital IDs mandatory. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have a digital ID. It's as simple as that, says Keir Starmer. This is what we've been warning about. And as I mentioned a few years ago, Professor Suzanne Michie in the UK, who helped roll out COVID policies, has been used to create a government nudge unit to force people into carbon credits, which would be through a digital ID on their banking app, which most banks already have. Most banks already have this. It's just not mandatory, but it could be flipped on at any moment under the guise of emergency. And they already have scores on you, my friends. And so does social media. Social media was a litmus for social credit eventually. All adults will be issued with digital ID cards under plans by Sir Keir Starmer to tackle illegal immigration. Sir, they call him. Of course, he is knighted to the royal family, whose King Charles, who murdered his wife, I believe, it was one of the guys who introduced the Great Reset alongside Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum. The prime minister is expected to announce his backing in principle for a so-called brick card designed to combat illegal migrants working in the black economy. Anyone seeking to start a new job or rent a property would be required to present their digital ID, which would then be checked automatically against a central database of individuals entitled to work in the UK. So again, everyone is going to have to deal with this. At present, workers have to show one of a number of physical ID documents, but there are concerns that some of these can be faked, and there's little to stop unscrupulous employers claiming they have made a check when they have not. Again, they used those cards, those QRs, back in 2021 as a litmus. I've been warning people about that for some time. Vietnam closes 86 million bank accounts over missing biometric verification. So this is most of the country. The government in Hanoi has ordered the closure of bank accounts lacking biometric verification, affecting over 86 million accounts. Starting September 1st, Vietnam has decided to permanently close more than 86 million bank accounts that did not comply with the new facial biometric authentication requirements. The remaining 113 million accounts have been subjected to verification under the new anti-fraud, anti-money laundering regulations. They've tried similar things in the past in India, but it actually failed. They are going full-fledged communist in Vietnam. Weird how that happens in a country that was propped up, by the way, in the 1930s by FDR against the French to prop up communism, Ho Chi Minh. And of course, that led to a war from the 50s to the 70s, largely in the late 60s into the early 70s, which led to countless people dying and the U.S. eventually pulling out after a massive draft and a massive headache militaristically. Of course, they were fighting against their own weapons, which FDR handed to Ho Chi Minh while he was in Washington, while his second in command was murdering a bunch of French soldiers, which you could disagree with their colonialism over there, but you cannot honestly, humanly say it's okay to mass murder a bunch of people while getting armed to prop up a communist empire. Again, speaking of that, we have the same country pushing this digital ID, arresting people like George Galloway and many others recently at airports for offensive posts, or he went to Russia, or they use a terrorism act, which they can use against anyone at any time for any reason, just because they feel like it. And this is all this kind of stuff is leading to a major boost in Bitcoin. Now, I'm a big supporter of privacy coins like Epic Cash, Monero, Pirate Chain, stuff like that. But I'm a big fan of Epic Cash. And it's all about, privacy, not, Bitcoin, I think it's likely started by the government, but I do think that the infrastructure itself, anyone could replicate and create in their own way and make untraceable and make encrypted, which I think is a great thing. I also am a huge fan of gold and silver. Again, we have that link in the description, firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/. It has to be that link where you can get out of that CBDC system and get physical gold. But again, and work with Mark Gonzalez. But again, we are going to see this crackdown continue. Biometricupdate.com talks about Mexico making biometric identifier mandatory for all citizens. Now, this is going to happen completely by January. As someone that lives in Mexico, I'm currently on the road in Canada, and I've been dealing with banks shutting me down. So again, I know a lot about this subject. Mexico is making this mandatory as they bring in, this is following the election of Claudia Sheinbaum, who is complying with a lot of what the U.S. wants with her, though she denies it. It's kind of clear that they're setting up Mexico for a part of the Great Reset because, again, Mexico is going to be a target of the U.S. And I believe that it's also one of the few examples of family-friendly, more conservative, traditional countries in North America where they actually do use a lot of cash, and a lot of most places really in the smaller neighborhoods do not accept credit card. So they've been trying to do this for a while. Same with through OXXO which is like their version of 7-Eleven in Mexico, which has been trying to go cashless for a while, though has not succeeded. Swiss voters narrowly approve digital ID. Critics say it opens door to total surveillance, says lifesitenews.com. Just over 21,000 votes tipped the result as Switzerland reversed its 2021 rejection, sparking fears of surveillance, job loss, and creeping mandates across Europe. I'm telling you, it is here. It is here. Stop thinking that this is just going to go away. It's only going to get worse. And if you don't prepare, you will be left behind. And it's going to be hard to feel bad for you with all the warnings that you've been given. I'm not speaking to anyone specifically watching this right now. I'm speaking to everyone specifically if they have not done anything to prepare. OpenAI adopts user monitoring digital ID verification. The internet's lasting stronghold of anonymity is being dismantled in the name of safety. Again, part of the agenda, Sam Altman and the OpenAI team, as well as Palantir, as well as people like Larry Ellison, as well as people like Elon Musk, and under the guise of safety, where, you know, recently Trump said after the Charlie Kirk assassination, the reporter mentioned, you know, Charlie Kirk said that you have the right to all kind of speech, including hate speech. And there's no such thing as actual hate speech. And Trump responded, I don't know if you'd still agree with that now, and like giggles about it. Yeah, he would. I knew the guy. I know he would. It's so frustrating that they're utilizing an issue of someone getting shot for having free speech to stifle free speech. And yes, they are doing that. I'm not talking about Jimmy Kimmel. I don't give a damn about Jimmy Kimmel. I don't give a damn about Colbert. I don't give a damn about any of those people, the shills that celebrated people like Tucker Carlson getting canceled, by the way, and taken off air when he actually had good ratings. I don't care about any of that. I care about you as an individual. What happens to you when the digital IDs are launched completely across the board? EU to launch biometric entry-exit system for U.S. travelers starting October 12th. Passport stamps give way to fingerprints as Europe quietly rewrites the rules of arrival. I've been seeing this change for years. They already have a lot of this happening in places like Texas and New York. And now they have the Real ID, which I've done full reports on. I'm not going to go into all of it today, but the Real ID is, of course, the opening of a door to digital IDs. And with the Genius Act and the creation of a digital currency system, which they claim won't be a CBDC, but only the Congress said that the Senate feels differently, we will see this mandated and rolled out. TSA ushers in automated security checkpoints with clear biometric gate partnership, PPP, to improve traveler experience ahead of FIFA World Cup and Olympics. And that was from August 21st, 2025. This is something I've been also talking about a lot. The full rollout of these biometrics at airports. Everywhere you go, you'll be tracked. It's not just cameras. It's facial recognition. It's AI examining you and pre-crime data, which they're rolling out in places like New York. Yes, pre-crime. They will be able to apparently determine if you're going to commit a crime before you do it by your facial expression and how you walk and lip reading and all sorts of stuff while you're walking down the street. If people don't realize how dangerous this is, then, okay, walk into the fire, burn your feet, act like a frog in water, boiling, do nothing. But if you see this as an issue, as a concern for you and your family, and the future of your family, perhaps your kids, your grandkids, it is, when they say it's mandatory for these digital IDs, I say for you, it is mandatory to have something backed up so you aren't dependent on their system, their poisonous foods, the stuff that they will be rationing you in those bread lines and under the guise of solving an emergency, national security, and safety. They will do this. And under the guise of convenience, they bring in tyranny as always, and people will go for it. They're creating problem, reaction, solution, repeat, the Hegelian dialectic over and over and over again. And people just keep getting normalized to it. And now they have the CBDC in the European Union rolling out this next month. And 193 countries in total rolling out CBDCs. And whether you support Russia, Ukraine, both of them are rolling it out. Whether you support China or Taiwan, both of them are rolling it out. In fact, China was basically the litmus test propped up by the West to do that, as I mentioned. Whether you like Democrat or Republican, both of them are promoting this. Whether you like liberal, conservative in places like Canada, both of them are promoting this. Daniel Smith, who is a premier of Alberta, Canada, who's considered to be super hardcore right wing, is rolling out digital IDs as well, under the guise of stopping crime, of course. And then the other side will be under the guise of stopping climate change or right wing extremism or left wing extremism or whatever they want to say. It's all an excuse. It's a pretext in order to force you into a system of technocratic governance where you give up your humanity for their system. You have no free will any longer. And you will eat what they tell you to eat. You will drink what they tell you to drink. You will own nothing and you will be happy according to them, living in your 15-minute city. Also very convenient, using nothing but your palm or your eye or facial recognition, or still perhaps just a card, tracked everywhere and made sure that you are complacent, weak, run down, burnt out, and useless. Again, Yuval Noah Harari at the World Economic Forum said that he dreams of a world where people are placated on drugs playing video games at all times. They own nothing. They're drooling. They don't work. UBI takes over. Elon Musk has essentially said the same thing. He dreams of a world where UBI takes over and you don't have to work. We need a reason in life, a purpose in life. And they're trying to take that away from us. People will say, well, I don't want to work. Yeah, I don't blame you. No one wants to work in this tax bracket, in this system of inflation and forced poverty and red tape and regulations and chaos around the world at all moments of every day. No one wants to, but they've made it that way. So you feel nothing, no success from your hard work. You will, however, in the face of their restrictions, feel a lot better when you are backed up and you have stocked up equipment for what is to come. I'm a big believer that we will, as individuals, I shouldn't say we, but as individuals, if you stock up, you will have the biggest weapon to use against the system peacefully, of course, withdrawing from the system, because they want to get rid of your humanity itself. Your humanity is based on individualism, freedom, self-responsibility. These things are also synonymous with freedom. It comes down to you actually making that move. So I urge people to go and check out heavensharvest.com. Again, for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO, there's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, books on how to get started. Again, use code WAM, W-A-M. Stock up on this today. If you have a bucket already or 3, get more. Make sure that you have enough to last you a few months, because I think this whole system will not take more than a year or 2 at the most before it collapses under its own weight. Of course, like the Tower of Babel or Building 7, whatever it might be. I urge people to stock up again. And as I mentioned earlier, we have firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/ linked in the description. It has to be that exact link. Of course, there you could buy physical gold, silver, hold it in your hand, put it in a vault, put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system. And of course, you could work with Mark Gonzalez, get a free consultation with him and a free investors package. Just let him know that he found him at WAM, World Alternative Media, or WAM. And again, those are real options to getting out of that digital system. We have a lot of things that you could go and check out in the description. Everything from health things, health links, vni.life/WAM. WAM 15 is a code, WAM 15, for super supplements like Protovite. Again, super cool. Love what they're doing. Again, good to be healthy in the face of all this. Look at the before and after of the blood circulation versus after you take it 5 minutes later. Red blood cells are flowing freely. White blood cells 4 times bigger. No more of that bad circulation. Again, those are all in the description. And I want to make sure that people look in that description and get on this today. Wave Watch 2.0, $100 off if you use code WAM, W-A-M. Again, we have options. Help local farmers while saving money and getting healthy meats. But with our Wild Pasture link, 20% off for life plus $15 off your first box. Again, highly recommend people go and take these seriously. And if you want to help support us, we do need all the help we can get. So if you look in the description, we have gogetfunding.com. We have Patreon, Subscribestar. Anything helps, my friends. And you guys are what keeps independent media alive. We've been facing off against both mainstream and mainstream alternative media for a long time. And we refuse to step down. We refuse to back out. And we will do anything we can to continue to bring you information that most sides are reluctant to tell you. I mean, I'll give you an example. We've been offered $1 million contract before in a year, and we told them to take a hike because we will not say what they tell us to say. We want to bring you the truth. Find the truth, be the change. We've always said that. So again, we have Patreon subscribe star, $4.99 a month or more. We'll get you exclusive content. Same with on X at World Alt Media, where you could follow us there. We have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. And we have a Bitcoin address that you could scan on the screen here or check out in the description of the video and text form. We have our Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in if you please, including privacy coins. And of course, we have our Teespring store with a bunch of merchandise that helps support us as well. So go and check that all out in the description and help support us if you can. I'm still on the ground in Canada. I will be getting back to Mexico right away, dealing with banks, again, shutting me down. Like I said, I know this well. It's not the first time in the last year this has happened. This is why we need to fight, because they will come after you too. And a lot of debanking is happening, and banks are bankrupt to begin with. So get prepared for that. Of course, you can find us on Telegram, Band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson, and on the Bad Guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where, of course, we are banned. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And as always, my friends, live freely, live by example always. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.